There are things in life that change you forever. Some happen slowly, like the fading of a photograph. Others come like a thunderclap, fast, brutal, and unforgettable. My name is Elena. I was once a devoted wife, a promising legal advisor, and a woman with dreams of peace and family. But now, when I look at myself in the mirror, I barely recognize the woman staring back. My heart, once full, now carries a weight heavier than guilt. It carries the name Baltasar in Gonga. It began innocently. Too innocently. I was working with the Ministry of Justice, assigned temporarily as a liaison to the National Financial Investigation Agency (NFIA) for a case involving money laundering through offshore accounts. The case was high-profile and dangerous. The man overseeing it all was none other than Baltasar Ngonga, the sharp-eyed, enigmatic leader of the NFIA, known for his cunning, charisma, and unforgiving pursuit of corruption. I was married to Rodrigo, then my Rodrigo. Gentle, sincere, always supportive. A man who believed in loyalty above all else. We had been married for 6 years. Our love had weathered challenges, long work hours, financial strain, and even my miscarriage 2 years before. But through it all, we held each other up. Rodrigo was my anchor in a chaotic world. And yet I was drawn to Baltasar. It wasn't immediate. In fact, I disliked him at first. He was cold, intimidating, always one step ahead. But then I began to see the man behind the armor. He would stay late in the office, just like me, often pacing, whispering to himself. His mind never rested. One night, during a storm that made the power flicker and the rain beat hard against the office windows, we shared tea. I saw him smile for the first time, really smile. "I envy men like Rodrigo," he told me quietly. "They know how to be soft." I should have left then. I should have taken that as a sign to retreat. But I didn't. We started spending more time together. At first it was all about the case, long nights in the war room, heated arguments about legal strategy, chasing leads that took us to hidden corners of the financial world. But then came the little things, the glances held too long, the hands that brushed when they didn't need to, the silences that weren't uncomfortable anymore. I told myself it was just admiration. But one night, after a late meeting, he walked me to my car. He didn't speak, just stared into my eyes and kissed me. And I kissed him back. It was wrong. I knew that. I could taste the wrongness like blood in my mouth. But I kept going back. Over and over. To him. To his silence. To his fire. Rodrigo started noticing. He asked if I was tired, if I was overworking. He made me dinner. He left me little notes in my purse, thinking of you, or I come home early tonight. I started lying. Late casework, I'd say. Another briefing with Baltasar. The name became poison in my mouth. One evening, Rodrigo surprised me at the office. He brought me food, lasagna, my favorite. I wasn't there. Baltasar and I were in his private quarters across town, wrapped in guilt and pleasure. I didn't check my phone. I didn't want to. When I finally got home, Rodrigo was waiting. "Elena," he said, standing with the empty dish in his hands. "Did you love him before it happened?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He left that night. He packed only a few things, a pair of shoes, his books, and a wedding photo. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't cry. But his silence was louder than any scream. Baltasar offered me everything. Power. Prestige. He said I could rise with him, that we were made of the same flame. But I wasn't made for fire. I was made for warmth. For home. Eventually, the affair was discovered by the agency. I was quietly dismissed. No scandal, just silence. Baltasar didn't defend me. He just looked at me and said, "This is how it was always going to end." Now I live alone in a quiet apartment. Rodrigo and I are divorced. I see his name sometimes in the news. He opened a small legal aid center. He helps families. He found purpose in the ashes. And Baltasar, he still leads the NFI. Still untouchable. Still a ghost in the hallways of justice. Sometimes, when the wind howls at night, I remember the sound of Rodrigo's laugh. I remember how he held me when I was broken. And I ask myself, how did I trade a life of love for a moment of fire? I don't know if he'll ever forgive me. I wouldn't blame him if he didn't. But every letter I write that I'll never send starts the same way. Rodrigo, I'm sorry. Baltasar took me to a private villa, one owned by a friend of his in the ministry. It overlooked the sea. There was no one for miles. We drank red wine, ate olives and cheese by candlelight. He didn't touch me at first. He just watched the storm through the tall windows and said, if this were another life, would you have come to me sooner? I couldn't answer. My throat tightened. So he didn't press me. We made love that night by the window, with the storm raging behind us. He held my face afterward, not tenderly like Rodrigo used to, but firmly possessively. I felt owned. I felt ashamed. I felt wanted. The guilt was always there. Even in the heat of passion. Even when I buried myself in his chest, pretending I was someone else. It would always come, later, at night, when I was lying next to Rodrigo, trying not to cry too loudly. Rodrigo would kiss my forehead and whisper, "You've been working too hard, mi amor. You're so tired." And I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him everything. But I was a coward. Baltasar never asked me to leave Rodrigo. That was the worst part. He never made promises. Never fantasized about a future. To him, I was a secret he could afford to keep a prize in a locked box. But I began to want more. It crept in slowly. I started imagining what it would be like to walk into a room with Baltasar and not pretend. To reach for his hand in public. To not have to lie about every single text, every meeting, every unexplained bruise from a hurried moment in a hallway. One day, I asked him, "Do you ever think about what we are?" He looked at me with that stillness that made him seem like stone. "We are who we are," he said. "We take what the world won't give us. That's all." It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. The worst moments were Sunday mornings. Rodrigo and I had a ritual. We would make pancakes, sit on the balcony, and listen to old Spanish ballads. He'd read the newspaper. I'd pretend to read a book while my mind drifted to the night before. Rodrigo would say something like, "We should go to the coast next weekend," and I'd smile and nod, knowing full well I'd already promised Baltasar I'd be with him at a retreat for state officials. The dual life was starting to crack. I forgot names. I repeated stories. I left a necklace in Baltasar's car once he found it and kept it, joking, "You want me to get caught, don't you?" I told him no. But part of me did. Part of me wanted it to end. And yet, I couldn't stop. He was like gravity pulling me back, even when I tried to resist. When I told him we needed distance, he simply said, "You'll come back. You always do." And I did. Until Rodrigo found out. Until I walked through the door that night, soaked from rain and guilt, and saw the look in Rodrigo's eyes, a look I will never forget. A look that said, "You weren't just unfaithful. You were never really mine." Now, years later, I still think about those secret days with Baltasar. They were passion wrapped in poison. Fire in a glass cage. I remember how it felt to be wanted so desperately that morality felt optional. I remember how the thrill came with a countdown. And how I didn't stop the clock. Sometimes, I wonder if Baltasar ever thinks of me. If he remembers the villa, the notes, the stolen hours. Or if, like everything else in his world, I was just another move in a power game, one he always knew he'd win. And I was the queen who gave herself up. Before the world unraveled, before betrayal had a name and a face, there was Mary, my friend. My confidant. The woman I once trusted, even admired. And the woman I deceived in the most intimate way a person can be deceived. She was Balthasar's wife. And I was sleeping with him. We met 5 years ago, long before the affair, at a gala for legal reform hosted by the Ministry of Justice. I was still relatively new to the upper legal circuit, fresh-faced, driven, and starved for validation. Mary was everything I wasn't: graceful, collected, elegant in a way that seemed effortless. She didn't need the room to notice her, yet somehow, it always did. I never imagined that night that our paths would tangle so tightly, or so tragically. We became friends easily. She had a way of listening that made you feel like your words mattered. And unlike many others in our world of politics and law, she didn't speak in veiled agendas or calculated half-truths. Mary was warm, open, disarmingly kind. She had been with Balthasar for over a decade. We met when I was too young to understand what I was stepping into, she once told me over coffee, laughing lightly. But I fell for his mind. It's dangerous, but beautiful, isn't it? At the time, I nodded, unaware of how intimately I would come to understand what she meant. We grew closer over the months. We'd meet for wine after work, or walk through the botanic gardens on Sundays. She was always the one who asked about me, my marriage, my work, my plans. She took a quiet interest in the shape of my life. She said Rodrigo sounded like the last good man in Madrid. She envied our simplicity, our ease. Balthasar doesn't know how to be simple, she said once. He's all shadow and still. And still she loved him. She never complained about him directly, but the signs were there if you knew where to look. The way her eyes flickered when his name came up in conversation. The way she always seemed to exhale when talking about him, like loving him required physical effort. He forgets to come home sometimes, she told me. But I suppose that's the price of brilliance. The price of brilliance. The price she paid. And her friend was the one raising the bill. The first time I saw her after Balthasar and I crossed the line, I couldn't meet her eyes. She invited me to their house for dinner. Rodrigo couldn't make it, he was away at a conference, so I went alone. My heart thudded like it wanted to warn me. But I ignored it, as I always did when it came to Balthasar. Mary had cooked a beautiful paella, with saffron and shellfish and wine in crystal glasses. She set the table with her mother's china. Her hands shook slightly as she poured the wine. She said she'd been feeling anxious lately. Too much work. Too much pressure. And Balthasar's always at the office. I wanted to scream. He's not at the office. He's with me. But instead, I smiled. I helped her slice the bread. I complimented her earrings. And all the while, Balthasar sat across from me, calm and composed. He played the part of the loyal husband with such flawless ease that I nearly forgot, for a moment, what we'd done just 2 nights before, in the back seat of his car outside the agency. Mary never noticed. Or if she did, she didn't let on. She even hugged me tightly at the door when I left, saying, "You're one of the few people I trust in this town." That sentence cut me deeper than anything else ever had. After that night, I tried to create distance. I declined her invitations. I ignored her texts. I told myself it was for her sake. That it was some warped act of mercy. But really, it was cowardice. And yet, somehow, Mary never gave up on me. She sent me articles about women in law. She asked me about my work. She kept telling me she missed our walks. "You're like a sister to me, Elena," she said in one voice message. "I hope everything is okay." I nearly deleted it, then listened to it again. And cried. There were moments, so many moments, where I wanted to tell her. Where I nearly let it all spill out like poison from a cup. I imagined it constantly, sitting her down, holding her hands, then saying, "I'm sorry. I've betrayed you. I've broken something sacred." But I didn't. I let the lie grow. I let her look me in the eye and call me her friend. I let her love me. And Balthasar. He never mentioned her. Never brought up her name unless I did. It was like she didn't exist in his world when we were together. It horrified me, even as it freed me. Because if he could erase her, then I could pretend he'd never erase me. But I knew better. Deep down, I always did. Then came the moment it all changed. It was the same week Rodrigo found out. Word of the affair hadn't gone public yet. But the rumor mill was churning. I started noticing glances in the office. Whispers that stopped when I entered a room. Mary called me. Her voice was quiet. "Elena," she said, "I need to ask you something." I froze. Someone told me something disgusting. And I don't want to believe it. "But you haven't answered my calls. You've been distant. Please tell me it isn't true." My mouth went dry. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. "Tell me you haven't been with Balthasar." There it was. No room to hide. I opened my mouth. But no words came out. The silence said everything. She hung up. I haven't spoken to her since. I saw her once, from a distance, at a legal conference 6 months later. She looked smaller. Thinner. She passed me like a ghost and never looked back. I deserved that. I still do. Sometimes I dream of her. We are sitting in the garden again, drinking wine, laughing about something meaningless. I reach out to touch her hand to warn her to stop the train before it crashes, but it's always too late. She fades away before I can speak. Mary was more than just Balthasar's wife. She was my friend. And I was the knife behind her smile. There are mornings when I wake up and, just for a second, forget everything that's happened. I'll hear the birds outside, sunlight slipping gently through the curtains, and I'll turn over in bed expecting to see Rodrigo sleeping peacefully beside me. I'll reach for his hand under the covers, or stretch out toward his warmth. But there's only cold. The bed has been empty for 3 years now. 3 long, hollow years. And I deserve every second of it. My life today is quiet. Too quiet, sometimes. I live in a small apartment in the outskirts of the city, a far cry from the townhouse Rodrigo and I shared in the heart of Madrid, filled with light and books and laughter. The walls here are bare. The kitchen is always too clean. There's a single photograph on the mantel, me and my mother, taken long ago. I keep no pictures of Rodrigo. I can't. It would hurt too much. After the scandal, I resigned from the ministry. It wasn't a formal firing, but the message was clear: disappear. So I did. I took work in legal documentation, low-level contract review for a private firm that barely asks for names. I go in, I do my work, and I go home. No one looks at me twice. No one whispers behind my back. It's almost peaceful, this anonymity. But peace isn't the same as joy. And I haven't known joy in a long time. My name used to mean something. People used to nod with respect when they heard it. Elena de la Vega, advisor to the ministry, legal mind behind landmark financial reforms. I was going to be a judge someday. Maybe even more. Rodrigo believed in that dream more than I ever did. He'd tell his colleagues, his friends, even strangers at dinner parties. Elena's going to change the justice system, he'd say, his eyes bright. Now, my name is only whispered. If it's said at all, it's with a cautionary tone. Ha! The one who threw away her marriage, her career, for him. For Balthasar. I don't know where he is now. Not exactly. Last I heard, he took a promotion, something international, with jurisdiction far beyond our borders. Untouchable, as always. He never reached out to me after it all collapsed. No goodbye. No explanation. Just silence. Cold, calculated silence, the kind I used to mistake for strength. Sometimes I wonder if he ever cared for me at all. If I was just another tool in his chess game, a means to an end. Maybe he did care, in his own warped way. But it doesn't matter anymore. Love without honor is nothing. And I have nothing left of either. What eats at me most, what keeps me awake at night, what haunts me in dreams isn't the fall from power. It's the people I hurt. The two lives I shattered, Rodrigo and Mary. There's a scene that replays in my head every day, Rodrigo standing at the kitchen table, holding a crumpled note he found in my coat pocket. Not a love letter. Just one of Balthasar's cryptic messages. We are what the world won't allow, it said. Rodrigo didn't yell. He didn't curse. He just looked at me with a kind of grief that doesn't scream, it whispers. How long? He asked. I couldn't speak. He nodded slowly. And then, almost gently, he said, you've become someone I don't recognize. And he left. I haven't seen him since. I heard from a mutual friend that he's doing well running a legal aid center for immigrants and low-income families. He found purpose. Maybe even happiness. Maybe someone else too. I hope so. I wouldn't blame him. He was everything I didn't know how to value until it was gone. As for Mary, the last I heard, she sold the house. She went to the countryside. No one really knows much beyond that. And maybe it's better that way. I wouldn't know what to say to her if I ever saw her again. What apology could ever be enough? Sometimes I write letters to both of them. I never send them. They fill a drawer in my desk, pages and pages of guilt, sorrow, memories. In one of them, I wrote to Rodrigo. If I could go back, I would never walk into that office that day. I would never stay late. I would never let myself be seen. I would choose us over and over again. And in one to Mary. You were the only person who ever saw me fully, and you still called me friend. I wore your kindness like armor. And I stabbed you anyway. Regret doesn't live in the past. It lives here, with me, every single day. It's in the songs I can't listen to anymore. It's in the dishes I don't cook. It's in the empty side of the bed, the untouched books on my shelf, the lipstick I stopped wearing because it reminded me of nights I wish I could erase. But most of all, it's in the mirror. I see her sometimes, the woman I used to be. Bright-eyed. Full of purpose. Whole. She looks at me like a ghost watching the living. I wonder what she'd say to me now. I think she'd be disappointed. I think she'd turn away. But I keep going. I get up. I dress. I go to work. I breathe. I exist. And maybe, someday, I will forgive myself. But not today. Not yet. Today, I carry the weight. Because it's mine to bear.